Hi, I'm Jane Chamberlin. I want to give you a look at what my workshop will look like for the proposal that I'm doing for IABC 2020. It's about empathy and ethics in communications. And empathy is obviously important to communications in general, but I would argue that it's very important right now, given how divisive the politics of various nations are that are going on around the world. And there are lots of people out there trying to bridge some of those gaps between people and trying to foster understanding using empathy. And this is, of course, what communications is all about, is fostering understanding and persuading and informing and creating bonds between people. Empathy is also a big part of ethics. It's really the building block of ethics, because ethics is about what sort of obligation do we have to the other person. And if we understand the other person better through empathy, the better able we will be to make those responsible ethical decisions. And of course, as there's this increasing emphasis on corporate social responsibility, and business are becoming increasingly interested in their role in social justice and human rights, and particularly the environment, empathy has a huge role to play there. And of course, communicators can play a role in helping to build that socially responsible atmosphere. So what is empathy? Well, it has two different aspects to it. It's both emotional and intellectual. So it's about feeling as well as thinking. Empathy can be that knee-jerk reaction when you see someone in pain, you feel an element of their pain. We're hardwired to feel that. But it's also about asking yourself on a more intellectual level, what caused that pain? Am I implicated in that in some way? Or why did that person feel that pain in perhaps a different way than I would have felt it? So it's that emotional and intellectual response. So one of the wonderfully productive aspects of empathy is that it can create those bonds and create understanding. One thing I always talk about is curiosity. So if we're trying to step into someone else's skin and see the world through their eyes, that's different from, there's that expression, stepping into someone else's shoes, or putting yourself into someone else's shoes. That's just basically me looking at the world from your perspective. And that's not what empathy is. Empathy is really about, how does that person feel and why? What do I know about that person that can help me understand what they're thinking and feeling? What are their motives? What are their desires and their needs? And that really is about curiosity, asking those deep questions about, where does this person come from? What's their background? What have they been through in their life? What brings them to this moment to think the way that they do and have the certain attitudes that they do? Empathy can be very productive and a real force of connection, but it can also be dangerous. If you think about the fact that when you project yourself into someone else's attitudes or skin, it might be easy to assume that you know exactly what they're thinking and feeling when really you don't. So if you're not curious enough and you're not sort of digging deep into what is that person, what are they like? What's their background? If you're not digging into that, you might look at someone who is from a different place and maybe different ethnically and so on, and assume that you know what they're thinking and feeling when really you just have no basis for comprehending that. And given what's going on today with all the forces of identity and, intersectionality with gender, sexuality, and so on, it's really important not to make that mistake of assuming that you know how someone thinks and feels, and to really try to understand them with that element of curiosity. So how is all this useful to communicators? Well, obviously one of the big ways is that we need to understand our audience. So if we're using empathy and curiosity to really dig into our various audiences and figure out not just how many people are there and where are they from, but, why do they feel the way that they do? Where are they from? What sort of background do they have? What's their belief system? What's their value system? How did they get to where they are today? That's how you really answer that question of why do they feel the way that they do, which is really important when you're trying to get more insightful about your communications. So it's about knowing your audience. It's also about leadership. So if communicators are looking for more of a leadership role, we want to make sure that we're leading in an emotionally intelligent way, and that we're helping our organization lead in an empathetic, compassionate, socially responsible way. And empathy can also help in terms of relevance. There's this big focus now on making sure that the content that we produce and distribute is relevant to our target audiences. There's so much out there that people are bombarded with, that we need to make sure that they're receiving the content that's really relevant to them. And the better we know them, the more relevant it can be. So relevance is huge. And business leaders are seeing all these useful aspects of empathy. There's even a global empathy index right now that lists multinational organizations and rates them in terms of their empathetic value. So there is this movement towards a more compassionate and ethical future. And I believe that this workshop will help communicators play a bigger role in that. So thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you.